Starving, the orphan boy found a hidden door beneath the snow. What he found inside made him cry. There are places where winter doesn't leave, it just waits. If you've ever walked through mountains when the snow lies thick as sorrow, you know that silence. That white. That cold that reaches past your coat and settles in your bones like an old ache you've carried all your life. If you've ever felt alone in a world too big and too cold, stay with me. This story is for you. And if it touches something in your heart, subscribe, so we reach 1,000 souls together. The boy was 12, maybe 13. Hard to say. Hunger has a way of stealing years from a face, leaving only the eyes to tell the truth. His coat had been his mother's once. Brown wool, too large, the cuffs rolled back twice and still covering his hands. He kept a photograph in the inside pocket, pressed against his ribs. Her face, creased and faded. Her smile, forever caught in a moment he could barely remember. 3 days since he'd eaten anything but snow. The mountains rose around him like the walls of some vast cathedral, indifferent and eternal. He followed an old railway line, half buried, the rails themselves barely visible beneath the drifts. His boots, too thin, too worn, left prints that filled with fresh powder almost as soon as he lifted his feet, as if the world was already erasing him. Wind came down from the peaks, carrying the smell of pine and ice. It cut through the wool, through skin, straight to the marrow. He pulled the coat tighter, kept walking, because what else was there? The sky was closing. That's how it felt. Not darkening exactly, but pressing down, heavy with the promise of more snow. A blizzard, maybe, the kind that buries things, the kind that doesn't ask permission. He'd been walking since dawn, following the rails because they meant people once came this way. Meant there might be something, a shelter, a town, a hand reaching out. But the rails just kept going, disappearing into white, and the boy kept following because stopping meant something else entirely. His stomach cramped. He pressed a hand there, felt the hollow. Thought about the last thing he'd eaten, a crust of bread, hard as stone, shared with a stray dog outside a church 2 towns back. The dog had whined and licked his fingers. He wondered if it was still alive. There's a moment when you're cold enough and hungry enough when the world starts to feel like a dream. Not a good dream. The kind where you're walking and never arrive. Where the road stretches longer with every step. The boy felt it now, that strange lightness in his head, that distance from his own body. He stopped, looked back at his tracks, disappearing into the white. Looked ahead at the rails, vanishing into more white. For a moment, he couldn't remember why he was walking. Couldn't remember where he'd come from or where he thought he was going. The photograph. He reached for it with numb fingers, pulled it from the pocket. Her face. That smile. He remembered her voice, low and warm, singing something he couldn't quite recall. Remembered the way she'd button his coat before school, her fingers quick and sure. Remembered the last time he saw her, in a hospital room that smelled like bleach and ending. Keep going, she'd said. Promise me. He'd promised. The wind picked up. The first flakes of new snow began to fall, small and hard, like frozen tears. The boy folded the photograph carefully, returned it to the pocket against his heart, and kept walking. Maybe a mile ahead. Though distance means nothing in snow, he saw it. A shape darker than the white. Angular. Man-made. His heart kicked once hard against his ribs. He quickened his pace, stumbling through drifts that reached his knees. The shape resolved slowly. A building, low and long, half buried. An old railway station, abandoned, its windows dark and empty as the eyes of something long dead. But it was shelter. It was walls and maybe a roof. It was something other than endless white. The boy pushed forward, breath coming hard now, each inhale like swallowing knives. The station loomed closer. He could see the platform, the collapsed overhang, the door hanging crooked on broken hinges. Behind him, the blizzard began in earnest. The wind howled. The world disappeared into white. He reached the door just as the last light failed. The railway station smelled like decades, rot and rust, and the particular loneliness of places people have forgotten. The boy stood just inside the doorway, breathing hard, watching his breath cloud in the darkness. Behind him, through the broken door, The blizzard raged like something alive and angry. He was out of the wind, at least. That was something. His eyes adjusted slowly. The main room of the station stretched before him. Empty ticket windows, a broken bench, pieces of ceiling collapsed inward, leaving piles of old snow and debris on the floor. Graffiti marked one wall, faded and meaningless. Someone's name. A date from 15 years ago. Proof that people had been here once, even if only to leave their mark and move on. The boy's legs shook. He made his way to the bench, cleared off the snow, sat down carefully. His body wanted to collapse, wanted to curl up right there and let the cold take him into something like sleep. He knew better, had seen what happened to people who stopped moving in winter. Not yet, he whispered. His voice sounded strange in the empty space, small and foreign. He pulled off his gloves, his mother's gloves, really threadbare and patched, and rubbed his hands together. The skin was pale, almost blue. He couldn't feel his toes anymore. That was bad. He knew that was bad. Think. Stay awake. Stay moving. He stood again, forced himself to walk the perimeter of the room, looking for anything useful, anything at all. In the corner, he found an old metal trash can, rusted through at the bottom. Next to it, a broom handle, some broken glass, nothing that would save him. But there, on a shelf behind what had been the ticket window, a rusted lantern. His heart lifted. He reached for it, shook it gently. Liquid sloshed inside. Oil, maybe. Still some left after all these years. He had matches. 3 of them, kept dry in a plastic bag in his deepest pocket. 3 chances. The boy set the lantern on the floor, knelt beside it, said a prayer to whoever might be listening. Struck the first match. It flared, bright and impossible in the darkness. He lifted the lantern's glass, touched the flame to the wick. Nothing. The match burned down to his fingers. He dropped it, shook his hand. Second match. His hands trembled. He steadied them as best he could. Struck the match. Flame. This time he held it longer against the wick, patient, hopeful. The wick caught. A small flame, orange and brave, pushing back the darkness. The boy let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Light. Warmth. Not much, but some. Enough to make the world feel less like a grave. He held his hands near the lantern's glass, felt that tiny heat. His eyes burned. He blinked hard. Crying used water he didn't have. In the new light, he saw what he'd missed before. Footprints in the dust and old snow. Boot prints, adult-sized, leading away from the main room toward a back hallway. Recent enough that they hadn't filled with debris. Maybe days old. Maybe less. Someone else had been here. The thought was strange, comforting and frightening at once. Another person, alive, seeking shelter just like him. Maybe still nearby. "Hello," he called. His voice echoed in the empty station. No answer came. The boy picked up the lantern, followed the footprints down the dark hallway. The light swung with his steps, making shadows dance on the walls. Doors lined the corridor, old offices, storage rooms, all standing open and empty. At the end of the hall, a stairway descended into deeper darkness. The footprints led down. The boy hesitated at the top of the stairs. Every story his mother ever told him said, "Don't go into dark places. Don't follow strangers. Don't trust the unknown." But she'd also said, sometimes the only way forward is through the hard thing. And he had nowhere else to go. He descended carefully, testing each step before putting his weight on it. The stairs creaked, but held. The air grew colder as he went down. Somehow colder even than above, as if he was descending into the earth's frozen heart. At the bottom, another hallway. Narrower. Lower ceiling. The footprints continued, fainter now, harder to see. He followed them to a door at the end. Heavy wood, closed tight. The boy set the lantern down, tried the handle. Locked. But no, not locked. Just stuck. Swollen from moisture and age. He put his shoulder against it, pushed. The door resisted, then gave suddenly. He stumbled forward into darkness that smelled different. Older. Deeper. He raised the lantern and stopped breathing. There are moments that divide a life into before and after. The boy would remember this one forever. The way the lantern light fell across the small underground room. The way his heart seized in his chest. The way the world suddenly became both smaller and infinitely larger. The room was maybe 10 feet by 12. Stone walls, dry despite being underground. A ceiling low enough that a grown man would have to duck. And in that space, arranged with careful intention, the remnants of someone's secret life. A cot against one wall, made up with a wool blanket folded tight. A small wood stove in the corner, its pipe running up through a concealed vent. Shelves holding canned goods, beans, soup, vegetables, their labels faded but intact. A wooden crate serving as a table, and on it, a tin cup, a plate, a fork and spoon laid side by side. A candle in a jar. But it was the walls that made the boy's throat tighten. Photographs, dozens of them, pinned and taped to every available surface. Black and white, color faded to ghosts of themselves. Pictures of a woman, young and smiling. The same woman older, holding a baby. A little girl in a Sunday dress. The girl a few years older, missing her front teeth. The woman alone again, her smile different now, smaller, sadder. And between the photographs, letters. Some in frames, some just pinned flat. The boy moved closer, held a lantern up to read. Dear Sarah, I know you'll never see this, but I write it anyway. The railroad is closing the northern line. I'll be transferred or let go. Either way, I'll be far from where we buried her. Far from where she used to run and play. I can't bear it, so I'm building this place. My secret, my chapel, somewhere I can come and remember. Somewhere I can keep the world from erasing her completely. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. Each letter formed with the precision of someone who had time and sorrow to spare. The boy's hands trembled. He set the lantern on the crate, wrapped his arms around himself. This was someone's shrine, someone's hidden heart, buried beneath snow and stone and years. He shouldn't be here, shouldn't intrude on grief this private, this pure. But the cold, the hunger, the blizzard raging somewhere above, burying the world. He looked at the cot, the stove, the food on the shelves. Survival or respect for the dead. Not much of a choice when you thought about it. I'm sorry, he whispered to the photographs. To the woman and the girl frozen in time. To whoever had built this place and filled it with love and loss. The stove, he could make a fire. There was wood stacked neatly beside it. Old, dry, perfect. His fingers were so cold he could barely feel them, but he managed to open the stove's door, arrange kindling inside. The last match. He had to make it count. He struck it against the box. Flame. He touched it to the kindling, held his breath. The fire caught, grew, filled the little stove with light and the promise of heat. The boy sat on the stone floor in front of the stove, held his hands toward the warmth, felt it seep into his skin, into his bones. Felt something inside him that had been frozen for so long begin, slowly, to thaw. Tears came then, silent, hot, unstoppable, not just from relief, not just from the warmth or the food or the shelter, but from the overwhelming recognition of being seen, even by ghosts, even by someone who had suffered and loved and built this place for reasons that had nothing to do with him. He wasn't alone, had never been alone. There were others who had hurt like this, who had lost like this, who had carved out small spaces of hope in the darkness and left them behind for whoever might need them next. The boy cried until he had no more tears. Then he wiped his face with the sleeve of his mother's coat, stood on shaking legs, and began to explore what he'd found. On the shelf beside the canned goods, a journal, leather-bound, worn soft with handling. He opened it carefully, afraid it might crumble at his touch. The first entry was dated 23 years ago. Built the room today. Hidden door under the platform, just like I planned. Nobody will find it unless they're meant to. This will be my place, where I can remember her without the world watching, where I can grieve without shame. The boy turned pages slowly. Entry after entry, dated months apart, then years. The handwriting changed, shakier, older. The words stayed the same. Love, loss. The particular loneliness of surviving the ones you die for. Near the end of the journal, an entry from 6 years ago. I'm old now. Can't make the journey out here as often. My legs aren't what they were. But I've stocked the place well. Left supplies. Just in case. Just in case someone needs it. Someone like me. Lost and cold and looking for a place to remember. Or someone else. Someone who just needs shelter. Either way, it's here. My gift to whoever finds it. Use it well. Be kind to yourself. You deserve kindness, even if you don't believe it yet. The last entry was dated 2 years ago. This will be my final visit. I can feel it. The winter in my bones has nothing to do with snow. But I'm not sad. I built something that will outlast me. A small place of warmth in a cold world. If you're reading this, you found it. That means you needed it. Take what you need. Rest. Heal. And when you're ready, keep going. The way my Sarah would have wanted. The way I'm teaching myself to want even now. Below the words, a name, Thomas Merritt. Railroad maintenance. Father. Keeper of memories. The boy closed the journal carefully, held it against his chest. Outside, the blizzard howled. Inside, the fire crackled. And somewhere in between, the space where grief and gratitude met, the boy found something he thought he'd lost forever. He found hope. The boy slept that night curled on the cot, wrapped in Thomas Merritt's wool blanket, the fire in the stove burning low and steady. He slept without dreams, or if he dreamed, he didn't remember. Sometimes mercy comes in forgetting. When he woke, he couldn't tell what time it was. The underground room had no windows, no way to measure the passage of hours. The lantern had burned itself out. Only the faint glow from the stove's grate gave any light, enough to see shapes, shadows, the photographs watching from the walls. His body ached, the kind of deep ache that comes from being cold too long, hungry too long, afraid too long. But he was warm now. That was something. That was everything. He sat up slowly, joints protesting. His stomach cramped, reminded him he hadn't eaten in days. The shelves, the canned goods. He stood, made his way across the room, selected a can of beans. There was a manual opener hanging from a nail, thoughtful, and he worked it around the lid until the can opened with a soft pop. He ate directly from the can, standing there in the dim light. Cold beans, thick with sauce that had separated over years. It was the best thing he'd ever tasted. He ate slowly, carefully, knowing his stomach would rebel if he rushed, knowing he needed to make the food last. When he finished, he set the empty can aside, wiped his mouth, looked around the room with clearer eyes now. Morning eyes if it was morning. Survivor eyes. The photographs drew him again. He moved closer, studying each one. The woman, Sarah, Thomas had called her, had kind eyes. The kind that crinkle at the corners when she smiled. The little girl looked like her. Same eyes, same smile. There was a photograph of Thomas himself, younger, standing beside Sarah, his arm around her shoulders. Both of them squinting into sunlight, happy in that casual way people are before they learn how easily happiness can be taken. Another photo showed the little girl on a tire swing. Mid-arc, her mouth open in delight or maybe a scream of joy. Behind her, out of focus, a house, a yard, a life. The boy touched the photograph's edge gently. "What happened to you?" he asked the image. The answer was in the journal, probably. In the entries he hadn't read yet. But some stories you don't need to read to know. Some losses are written in the architecture of a room, in the way a man builds a shrine and stocks it with supplies and hopes someone will find it when he's gone. The boy returned to the crate, sat down, opened the journal to where he'd left off. Read through the entries, one by one. The story emerged in fragments. The girl, Emily, had been 7. A fall, a river, spring runoff too fast and too cold. They found her 3 days later, 2 miles downstream. Sarah had never recovered. Grief carved her hollow, left only the shape of who she'd been. She followed Emily 6 years later. Heart attack, the doctors said. But Thomas knew better. A person can die of heartbreak, he'd written. I've seen it. I'm living it. The only difference is I'm taking longer. Thomas had kept working the railroad, kept living, built this room, visited it when the weight became too much, left supplies because somewhere in his ocean of grief, he'd kept hold of something essential, the belief that kindness matters, that preparing a place for someone else's suffering is its own kind of prayer. The boy read until his eyes burned. Then he closed the journal, sat in the silence, and let himself feel what he'd been running from. His own losses, his own Emily, his own Sarah, the mother who tried so hard to keep him safe, to keep them both afloat, until the cancer came and took her piece by piece. The foster homes after, some kind, some not, none of them home. The decision, finally, to leave, to walk into winter because it felt more honest than pretending he belonged anywhere. He thought he was alone in his grief, thought his loss was his alone to carry. But here, in Thomas Merritt's hidden room, surrounded by photographs of strangers who felt like family, he understood something new. Suffering is the most common language we speak. Loss is the country we all inhabit eventually. And sometimes the greatest kindness is simply leaving a light on for whoever comes after. The boy stood, examined the shelves more carefully, counted the cans, maybe 30 in all, enough for weeks if he was careful. There was a jug of water, sealed tight, a box of matches full, a small medical kit, the kind with bandages and aspirin. Everything you'd need to survive, everything you'd need to heal. He found something else too, tucked behind the canned goods. A metal box, the kind that might hold important papers. He lifted it down, surprised by its weight. The lid was tight, but not locked. He opened it. Inside, letters. Dozens of them, bundled with string. He untied the first bundle carefully, unfolded the top letter. Dear whoever finds this room, if you're reading this, it means you needed shelter, needed hope, needed a place to rest, and remember that the world isn't all cold and cruelty. I'm glad you found it. That's why I built it. Take what you need. Stay as long as you must. When you're ready to leave, I ask only one thing. Add something of yourself here. A photograph, a letter, a drawing. Some proof that you existed, that you survived, that you were here. Not for me. I'll be long gone, but for the next person. So they know they're not alone either. The world is hard. Life breaks us in ways we don't always heal from. But sometimes survival is enough. Sometimes just continuing is the bravest thing we do. Be gentle with yourself. You've come this far. With hope, Thomas Merritt, the boy's vision blurred. He folded the letter carefully, returned it to the box. Found another bundle, another letter. This one in different handwriting. Thomas, I found your room 5 years after you wrote that first letter. I was running from a husband who thought his fists were conversation. Your room saved my life. Gave me time to think, to plan, to remember I was worth saving. I stayed 3 weeks. When I left, I took your advice. Went to the women's shelter 2 towns over. Started again. I'm okay now. Have a job. A small apartment. A life that's mine. Thank you for building this place. For believing someone would need it. You were right. Claire, more letters. More stories. A veteran who'd lost his legs and his purpose. Who'd found a room and stayed until he remembered why he wanted to live. A teenage girl, pregnant and terrified, who'd sheltered there through a snowstorm and decided to keep her baby. A widower who'd come to end things, who'd read Thomas's journal and chosen to continue instead. Person after person, year after year, all of them finding this hidden place, all of them leaving their stories behind. The boy sat on the floor, surrounded by letters, and understood. This wasn't just Thomas Merritt's room anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever needed it. Everyone who'd ever been cold and scared and certain they were the only one feeling this particular kind of broken. He was part of something now, a chain of survival, a community of strangers bound by suffering and the simple miracle of continuing. Outside, the blizzard raged on. Inside, in the warm darkness, the boy made a decision. He would stay. He would heal. And when he was ready, he would leave something of himself behind. For the next person, for the next soul who needed to know they weren't alone. Days passed. The boy couldn't say how many. Time moved differently underground, slower, thicker, like moving through water. He slept when he was tired, ate when he was hungry, let his body remember what it felt like to be warm. The blizzard above eventually quieted. He could tell by the silence, the way the world stopped howling, stopped pressing against the earth like something trying to get in. But he didn't leave. Wasn't ready yet. Instead, he read. Thomas Merritt's journal had become his companion, his teacher, his map to understanding how a person survives losing everything. He read entries over and over, searching for the moment when Thomas chose to keep going, chose to build something instead of surrendering to the dark. Year 3 without them, one entry read. I thought it would get easier. Everyone said it would. They lied, or they didn't know, or their losses weren't the same as mine. It doesn't get easier. You just get stronger at carrying it. Like building calluses. The weight stays the same, but your hands get tougher. The boy understood that, had lived that. His mother's absence hadn't shrunk with time. He just learned to carry it differently. Some days it was a stone in his pocket. Some days it was a mountain on his back. He found the entry where Thomas described building the room. The planning, the secret excavation, the careful concealment of a door. It had taken him 3 years, working in stolen hours, telling no one. A project of grief and hope braided together. I'm building this for Emily, Thomas wrote. So there's a place in the world that remembers her perfectly. But I'm also building it for whoever comes after. Because I know in my bones, that I'm not the only one who needs a place like this. The world makes orphans of us all eventually. And orphans need shelter. The boy traced the words with his finger. Felt seen in a way he hadn't felt since his mother died. Thomas Merritt had known him. Had known he would come. Had left this place like a message in a bottle. Cast into the future. On the 4th day, or maybe the 5th, the boy decided to explore the other letters more thoroughly. He'd read Claire's. Had skimmed a few others. But there were dozens more, each one a window into someone else's survival. He found one from a man named David. I came here to die. Brought pills. Had a plan. But I found Thomas's journal instead, and I couldn't stop reading. Sounds stupid, maybe. Sounds too simple. But reading about someone else's pain, someone who kept going anyway, it made mine feel less infinite. Less final. I flushed the pills. Stayed for 2 weeks. Left different than I came. Alive when I meant to be dead. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, whoever reads this. I'm still here. That's something. Another from a woman named Rosa. My son died of an overdose. I couldn't look at his room. Couldn't stay in our house. Couldn't stay in our town. I drove until I ran out of gas near the old railway line. Found this place by accident, or by grace, depending on how you see these things. I've been here 6 days. I'm not healed. Don't know if I'll ever be healed. But I'm not drowning anymore. I'm floating. That's a start. More stories. More names. Jackson, who'd lost his farm. Amelia, who'd survived cancer but lost her faith. Marcus, whose daughter wouldn't speak to him anymore. Lily, who'd aged out of foster care with nowhere to go. Each one had found this room. Each one had been saved, in ways large or small. Each one had left their story behind, proof of their existence, their suffering, their choice to continue. The boy read until his eyes ached, until the words blurred together into a single voice saying, "You are not alone. You never were. Your pain is real, but it's not unique. Others have walked this path. Others have survived." He thought about his own story, the parts he'd share if he wrote them down. Would he talk about his mother? About the foster homes? About the moment he decided walking in a winter was better than staying in a place that didn't want him? Maybe. Or maybe he'd talk about this, about finding hope in a stranger's kindness, about learning that survival is something we do together, even when we're separated by years and circumstances and death itself. On what he thought might be the 6th day, the boy began to venture upstairs, just for short trips at first, checking the weather, testing his strength. The station above was still buried in snow, but the blizzard had passed. The sky beyond the broken door was blue, painfully, impossibly blue. He stood in the doorway, looked out at the white expanse, the distant mountains sharp against the sky. The world was beautiful and brutal. Had always been both. Would always be both. But there was warmth underneath. There were hidden rooms and left behind letters and strangers who cared enough to prepare a place for suffering they'd never witness. That mattered. That changed things. The boy returned to the underground room, sat at the crate, picked up a pen he'd found in the medical kit, found a piece of paper, the back of an old envelope, and began to write. My name is Michael. I'm 12 years old. My mother died 8 months ago. I've been alone since then, or I thought I was alone. But I found this place, and now I know different. Thomas Merritt, I wish I could have met you. Thank you for building this room. Thank you for believing someone would need it. You were right. I needed it. It saved my life. I'm going to stay a little longer, get my strength back, and then I'm going to leave and try again. Try to find a place that fits. Try to be the kind of person my mother believed I could be. To whoever finds this room after me, you're going to be okay. Maybe not today. Maybe not soon. But eventually. I promise. And I know because I'm okay now, even though I wasn't before. Even though I didn't think I would be. Keep going. The world needs you in it. Michael, he folded the letter, added it to the metal box with all the others. Then he took the photograph from his coat pocket, his mother's face, her smile, and pinned it to the wall among the other photographs. Among Thomas's family. Among all the faces of people who'd loved and lost, and survived anyway. This is my mother, he said to the empty room. To Thomas. To Emily and Sarah. To everyone who'd ever needed this place. Her name was Anne. She was kind. She did her best. I love her. The words echoed in the small space, then faded into silence. But they'd been spoken. That mattered. The boy, Michael, sat on the cot and looked at the wall of faces. His mother among them now. Part of the story. Part of the chain. He wasn't alone. Had never been alone. And when he left this place, he'd carry that knowledge with him. Carry it like a light into whatever came next. For now, though, he would rest. He would heal. He would remember what it felt like to be held by kindness, even kindness from ghosts. Outside, the sun tracked across the sky. Inside, in the warm darkness, a boy named Michael slept without fear and dreamed, for the first time in months, of spring. Michael stayed in Thomas Merritt's room for 11 days. He counted them by the candles he burned, one each night before sleeping, watching the flame dance against the stone walls, casting shadows that moved like living things. 11 small lights against 11 small darknesses. 11 sunsets he didn't see. 11 dawns that happened somewhere above without him. On the surface, spring was beginning its slow work. He could feel it even underground, a subtle shift in the air, a loosening, as if the earth itself was exhaling after holding its breath all winter. When he ventured upstairs to the ruined station, he found the snow softer, the icicles dripping, small patches of brown earth emerging like promises. But he wasn't ready yet. Not quite. Each morning he woke to warmth, made small fires in the stove, ate carefully from the dwindling supply of canned goods, rationing now with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned hunger. Each day he grew stronger, not just his body, though his ribs no longer showed quite so prominently, though his face had regained some color, but something deeper, something that didn't show on the surface. He spent hours reading the letters, memorizing the names. David, Rosa, Claire, Jackson, Amelia, Marcus, Lily, dozens more, each one a thread in a web he was now part of, each one proof that suffering could be survived, that continuing was possible, that hope wasn't just a word people said when they didn't know what else to offer. He thought about his mother often, the way she'd hum while cooking, even when there wasn't much to cook, the way she'd check his homework with patient attention, her finger following each line, the way, near the end, she'd held his hand and made him promise to keep going. Promise me, she'd said, her voice already thin, already leaving. Promise you'll find something worth staying for. He'd promised, but he hadn't understood what she meant. Not really. Had thought she meant a place, maybe a home. Someone to take him in and give him a bed and 3 meals and call him son. Now, surrounded by strangers' stories in a hidden room beneath the snow, he understood differently. She'd meant this web of connection, this chain of survival, this knowledge that we save each other in ways we don't always see, in ways that ripple forward through time. On the 9th day, he found carpenter's tools in a corner he hadn't fully explored. A hammer, some nails, a saw with surface rust, but still sharp enough. Thomas's tools, probably, left behind like everything else, left for whoever might need them. Michael had been noticing things. Small damages, a loose shelf support, the cot's frame slightly warped, the stove's door not quite closing right. Nothing critical, nothing that made the room unlivable. But still, if he was going to leave this place for the next person, shouldn't he leave it better than he found it? He spent 2 days on repairs, working slowly, methodically, the way his mother had taught him when they'd fixed their apartment's broken cabinet together. Measure twice, cut once, she'd said. Do it right or don't do it all. He tightened the shelf, straightened the cot frame using leverage and patience, adjusted the stove door until it sealed properly. Small improvements, small offerings to whoever came next. While he worked, he thought about his own story. The parts he'd written in his letter. They were true but incomplete. There was more to tell, more he needed to say, if only to himself. On the 10th night, he sat at the crate with Thomas's journal open beside him, and he began to write on a fresh piece of paper he'd found in the medical kit. Not a letter this time. Something else. Something bigger. I don't know if anyone will read this. Maybe no one ever will. But I need to write it anyway. My mother's name was Mitchell. She was a waitress at a diner on Route 40. She worked double shifts when she could, saved everything she could, tried to give me the childhood she never had. When she got sick, she fought. Not just for herself, for me. Because she knew what would happen if she lost. Knew I'd end up in the system. Knew I'd be alone. She made me promise to keep going. I didn't want to promise. Wanted to tell her I couldn't do it without her. But I promised anyway, because that's what you do when someone you love is dying. You promise them impossible things. After she died, I tried. Went to 3 different foster homes in 8 months. Good people mostly, but I didn't fit. Couldn't make myself fit. Felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Nothing quite right. Everything borrowed, nothing mine. So I left. Took what I could carry and started walking. Didn't have a plan. Didn't have hope, really. Just had the promise I made, and walking seemed like the only way to keep it. I almost died in the snow. Would have died, probably, if I hadn't found this place. Found Thomas Merritt's gift to the future. Found all these stories of people who hurt like me, who survived anyway. I'm writing this because I need to say it out loud, even if it's just on paper. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to leave this room and try again. Find a town. Find work. Find a way to matter. Not because I'm not scared. I'm terrified. But because staying here forever would betray everyone who left their stories behind. Would betray my mother's faith in me. Would betray Thomas Merritt's belief that this room could save someone. It saved me. Now I have to justify that salvation. Have to become someone worth saving. I don't know what comes next. Don't know if I'll find what I'm looking for, or if what I'm looking for even exists. But I know this. I'm not alone. Never was alone. There's a chain of people holding each other up across time, and I'm part of that chain now. That means something. That changes everything. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Anne. Thank you to everyone who left their stories here. I'm going to try to be worthy of what you gave me. I'm going to try to live. Michael Mitchell, 12 years old, still here. He folded the paper carefully, added it to the metal box with all the other letters. Then he sat back, looked at the wall of photographs, his mother's face among them, part of the family now, and felt something shift inside him. Not healing, exactly. The grief was still there, still heavy. But alongside it now, purpose, direction, the knowledge that surviving could mean something more than just continuing. Could mean honoring the people who'd held space for his pain, who'd built rooms and left supplies and believed in strangers they'd never meet. On the 11th morning, Michael woke knowing it was time. He made his bed carefully, swept the floor, organized the remaining supplies on the shelves. 15 cans left, more than enough for the next person. Stacked wood by the stove, trimmed the lamp's wick. Small acts of care, small gifts forward. He packed what little he had. His mother's coat, her gloves, the photograph now returned to his pocket. Took only 1 can of soup, 1 box of matches. Left everything else for whoever came next. Before leaving, he stood in the center of the room one last time. Looked at the photographs, the letters, the careful architecture of Thomas Merritt's grief and hope braided together. Thank you, he said to the empty room. To Thomas. To everyone who'd ever needed this place. I won't forget. Then he climbed the stairs, crossed the ruined station, and stepped out into early spring. The world was transforming. Snow still covered the mountains, but the valleys were greening. Bird song filled the air, something he hadn't heard in so long he'd almost forgotten the sound of it. The sun was warm on his face. The sky impossibly blue. Michael looked back once at the station, at the hidden door beneath the platform that no one would find unless they needed to. Unless they were meant to. Then he turned toward the rails leading south, toward towns and possibilities and whatever came next. And he started walking. Not running. Not fleeing. just walking, one foot in front of the other, the way his mother had taught him, the way Thomas Merritt had learned, the way everyone in that underground room had discovered. That survival is measured in single steps, and sometimes a single step is enough. Sometimes it's everything. 3 years later, a girl found a room. She was 15, running from a situation that had no good name, carrying nothing but fear and determination and a backpack with 2 changes of clothes. She'd heard stories about the old railway line, how it led to nowhere, how it was a good place to disappear if you needed to disappear. She needed to disappear. The station appeared out of the trees like something from a dream. Abandoned, half-collapsed, speaking in the language of forgotten things. She approached carefully, ready to run if she found someone there. Found only silence and ruins and a door hanging on broken hinges. Inside, she searched for anything useful. Found the remains of an old lantern. Found graffiti and debris and the particular loneliness of places people had given up on. But there were footprints in the dust. Old ones, barely visible, leading toward a back hallway. She followed them, downstairs, to a door that resisted, then gave, and found what Michael had found, what Thomas Merritt had built, what dozens of people before her had discovered when they needed it most. A room, warm and dry, stocked with supplies, walls covered in photographs and letters. A journal on a crate, open to an entry dated decades ago. The girl stood in the doorway, lantern trembling in her hand, and began to cry. Not from sadness, though there was plenty of that inside her, but from recognition, from the overwhelming gift of being seen by strangers, by ghosts, by people who'd hurt like she hurt and survived anyway. She read Thomas's journal, read the letters in the metal box, found Michael's story among them, the 12-year-old boy who'd nearly died in the snow, who'd been saved by this place, who'd promised to keep going. "I'm going to try to live," his letter ended. The girl wondered if he had, hoped he had, needed to believe he had, because she needed to believe that trying was enough, that survival was possible, that this terrible thing she was running from wouldn't be the end of her story. She stayed in the room for 6 days. Ate, slept, let her body remember what safety felt like. Read and reread the letters until she'd memorized the names, until they felt like family, until she understood she was part of something larger than her own pain. On the 6th day, she wrote her own letter. "My name is Sarah. I'm 15. I found this place when I needed it most. Thank you to Thomas Merritt, who built it. Thank you to Michael Mitchell, who left his story. Thank you to everyone who's been here before me. You saved my life without knowing me. That's a kind of love I didn't know existed. I'm going to leave tomorrow. Try to make it to the city. Try to find help. Try to become someone my younger self would be proud of. To whoever comes next, you're going to survive this. I promise. We all did. You will too. Sarah." She added her letter to the box, pinned a photograph to the wall, a picture of herself at 8, smiling, before everything got complicated. Proof she'd existed. Proof she'd survived. Then she left, walking south along the same rails Michael had walked, toward the same uncertain future, carrying the same impossible hope. The room remains. Over the years, more people find it. A veteran named James who'd lost his purpose along with his legs. A mother named Patricia fleeing domestic violence with her infant son. A trans teenager named Alex who'd been thrown out by his family. An elderly man named Robert who'd outlived everyone he loved and couldn't remember why he wanted to keep going. Each one finds shelter, finds stories, finds the knowledge that they're not alone in their suffering, that others have walked this path, that survival is a gift passed from hand to hand across time. Each one adds something to the room. A letter, a photograph, a small repair, a restocked shelf when they can manage it. Small acts of grace for whoever comes next. The chain grows longer. The web grows wider. And somewhere, in a city maybe, or a small town, or another mountain range entirely, Michael Mitchell is living. He's not a boy anymore. He's 23 now, working construction, renting a small apartment with a window that faces east toward the sunrise. He thinks about his mother every day, thinks about Thomas Merritt's room, thinks about the choice he made to keep going when giving up would have been easier. Some nights he can't sleep. On those nights, he writes letters. Not to anyone specific, just letters. Stories of kindness he's witnessed. Small moments of grace he's collected like stones in his pocket. He saves these letters in a box under his bed, thinking that someday, maybe, he'll find a place that needs them. A place where stories matter, where proving we survived becomes a gift to whoever comes after. He doesn't know about Sarah, doesn't know about James or Patricia or Alex or Robert. Doesn't know that the room he found has saved dozens more since he left it behind. But he knows this. The world is hard and beautiful in equal measure. Life breaks us in ways we don't always heal from. But sometimes, not always, but sometimes, we're given exactly what we need exactly when we need it. A room, a story, a stranger's faith that we're worth saving. And that knowledge, that gift, creates an obligation to keep going, to pass it forward, to be the hand reaching back for whoever's climbing up behind us. Michael keeps going. So does Sarah. So does James and Patricia and Alex and Robert and everyone else who's found that room and understood what it meant. They keep going because Thomas Merritt believed they would. Because Ann Mitchell made her son promise. Because somewhere in the architecture of suffering and grace, we're all connected, all holding each other up, all part of the same story that began long before us and will continue long after. The door beneath the platform remains open. The fire in the stove stays ready for lighting. The letters in the metal box multiply, testament to survival, proof of continuing. And somewhere in the mountains, where winter holds on longest and spring comes late, the snow begins to melt. Water runs down ancient rails. Birds return. The earth remembers how to be green. Life continues. It always does, even when we think it won't. Even when we're certain we can't carry the weight another step. We continue, because we promised someone we would. Because someone we've never met built a room and believed we'd need it. Because survival is the most profound act of faith there is. The boy who was starving found a hidden door beneath the snow. What he found inside made him cry. But what he became after, what they all became after, that's what matters. That's the story that doesn't end. That's the light we carry forward. Thank you for staying with this story. If it touched something in your heart, please subscribe to help us reach 1,000 souls who believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going. Hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories when they need them most. And in the comments, tell us, what state or city are you watching from? Let's build a community of hope together. Sometimes the smallest acts of compassion echo the longest. Sometimes a hidden room saves more lives than anyone ever knows. Sometimes we survive because someone we never met believed we would. Keep going. The world needs you in it. Until the next story, stay warm, stay kind, and remember, you're never as alone as you think.